The latest tech.
People love iPhone, and it's an important part of our daily lives.
Interviews.
You see far too many products that come on the market that you look at that you say, was a blind person ever even consulted for something like this?
Accessibility.
The most interesting thing over the last couple of years is the emphasis on gaming and accessibility.
This is Double Tap TV.
Welcome to the program. I am Marc Aflalo.
And I am Stephen Scott. Now, Marc, we're talking all about healthcare this week, right?
Well, kinda. You know, I was introduced to an app developer by an individual in Toronto whose mission is to make healthcare not only more accessible, but a little easier for people with a disability.
Okay, interesting. How exactly?
Okay, well, I'm not going to give it all away because, of course, we have a guest coming on. But, you know, it's all about improving communication before you even have a chance to go see a doctor. So it's making them aware of your disability and getting a lot of that out of the way so that when you get to your appointment, you can focus on the care itself. But before we even go there, I got to ask you a question because healthcare is different everywhere in the world. Obviously, here in Canada, we've got socialized medicine, and I know it's similar in Scotland as well, but around the world, that's not the case, and everybody's experience is different. Now, you've run into your own needs for healthcare over the years. What's that experience been like?
Yeah, well, it is interesting because, you know, depending on where you live in the UK, there are different levels of care. And that's very much what we call over here, you might call the zip code, we'll call the postcode lottery, which is essentially what we refer to as the areas of the UK that get excellent treatment and some areas that don't get great treatment at all. You know, I have to say I'm quite fortunate in the sense that I've had some really good care. One of the big challenges for me is actually access to information, and that's a big problem for a lot of blind people here in the UK. So, for example, you get a letter through the post, it comes in a standard font, and it tells you that your appointment is on, I don't know, Tuesday at 10 AM. And the problem with that, of course, is most people can't read the letter, so they never find out when that appointment is. You have to maybe get a neighbour to read it if you're alone at home, or you have to get someone else to read your private information. Now, when my vision got worse, I asked the local surgery to provide my letters in audio, which they did. The problem with the audio version is that it takes about 2 weeks to produce, minimum, which means by the time you actually get it through the process and the letter actually gets to you, you've missed your appointment. And of course it tells you the appointment you're waiting for is now in the past, and you know there can be all kinds of issues with that. And you know that's a problem. Now if you want it in audio, large print or braille, that is definitely an option for you. But oftentimes, even though you request that from your local surgery, that doesn't travel through to maybe the hospital or the clinic that you're visiting. So you end up getting letters back in standard print again. It's very frustrating. So these are the kind of realities you can face. I have to say as well, technology itself has created some barriers for people who visit their doctors at a surgery. You know, once you arrive nowadays, you have to sign in using an inaccessible kiosk, via touch screen. So you're often left having to hope that someone else can do it for you, meaning you have to give them your information, maybe birth date or maiden name or whatever it is, and that's not great. So, you know, in terms of the system, it's not perfect, no, but they are trying to find ways to make it better. But, you know, ultimately, I would say that on the whole, living in Scotland as I do, I'm strongly pro-socialist medicine and socialised medicine. So, you know, I hope that continues, at least, if nothing else.
Stephen, what about walking into an emergency room, for example, with your vision loss? Is that something you have to spend time explaining to doctors or nurses so they were aware of it? Does that even play a factor?
Yeah, so when I go see a doctor, you know, or go into an emergency room, the first thing I have to do is always explain that I'm low vision. And yes, I do have a white cane and I do have my dark sunglasses on most of the time, which usually gives that away. But, you know, obviously the first question I'm going to be asked is how much can I see? And then, you know, I have to try and explain that to people, which is not the easiest thing to do. So often I just tell them I'm blind. It's a lot easier because, you know, trying to explain low vision to someone is almost impossible. And, you know, my vision's so low anyway, I may as well just tell them I'm blind and be done with it. And that's the end of the story. So, yeah, you do have to explain this every single time to every single person. And if you're in a hospital and you're meeting different doctors and you're talking to different people, it can get a little frustrating.
Yeah, you know, here in Canada, it's all nice and, you know, dandy that it's all free. But sometimes you get what you pay for. It's a pretty good term to explain that. You know, long wait times to see a professional, months-long wait to get a specialist. And let's not even get into finding a family doctor. That's pretty insane here.
Yeah, that's again, I mean, it depends on where you are in the UK, right? But here, that's something you don't really see much of. The idea of the family doctor. There is a doctor, usually, and if you're very lucky, you'll see them more than once, but it's usually the first doctor you can get hold of. We tend to work on the beggars can't be choosers approach to healthcare in this country at the moment. So basically, you get what you get. The situation is, as you described, it is a little bit different here. I suppose wait times can be longer in different parts of the country rather than across the country. But yeah, it is definitely not as good as going private, that's for sure.
Okay, Stephen, let's take a quick break. When we come back, our guest is standing by. She ran into her own issues with disability and realized that there was a hole in the market for a solution that tries to kind of reduce the friction about getting healthcare, especially with someone who has a disability. We'll find out all about it when we come back here on Double Tap TV.
You're watching Double Tap TV. Get involved. Follow us at Double Tap On Air or email us feedback@doubletaponair.com. Double Tap TV will be right back. You're watching Double Tap TV.
And we're back on Double Tap TV. Now, Marc, you had an opportunity to discover a new app designed to, quote, reimagine and create a world of accessible, hospitable and inclusive healthcare, end quote.
And we've got the creator and founder with us this week from Toronto, Ilanna Mandel. Thank you so much for joining us this week. Welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Marc. Thank you so much for having me here today.
I'm excited to have a conversation with you because I want to know what inspired your app, ReadyBe.
Well, I've been in the disability field for about well over 35 years. Hard to believe. I got started as a teenager, and I was a program director for many years, an author, a speaker. And I myself struggled when, after an accident, I got a disability. And I found it very frustrating to try to access a lot of services. My friends weighed in, and then I thought, it's time to stop talking about it and time to start doing it. So I engaged in a 2-year research project to find out what was out there, and I found nothing. Absolutely nothing.
So I'm guessing that was the inspiration, obviously, behind this?
Yeah, my own experiences, the experience of colleagues and friends, and especially during COVID, a lot of alarms were raised by the AODA Coalition, David Lepofsky, those good people, about how there's a real lack of any kind of connect between people with disabilities and healthcare services, and especially when they go into a merge. There's a lot of fear and a lot of disconcern, and I know I've been there, and it's been very trying.
Can you describe some of those issues that people have on a day-to-day basis? Obviously, emergency is a very unique situation when you have something that's going on and you need care. But what about day-to-day with just regular healthcare access? What kind of struggles do people experience?
I think a lot of people. I did a survey recently, and a lot of people said it's attitudes. They face a lot of negativity. A lot of people saying inappropriate things to them. A lot of people, for example, a woman who's blind said to me the other day, she went in, to the office. It was a regular appointment. And the woman gave her a form and she said, but I'm blind. And she goes, well, how did you get here? And so it's things like that. It's being denied sign language interpreters. It's going into a building that they say is accessible, but there's no accessible washroom. It's, being neurodivergent. And people having no understanding or awareness of what that is. It's a long list. I'm afraid I could go on for too long, but I think it's a lot of physical barriers and attitudinal barriers. That's where we really need to start changing the healthcare paradigm.
Talk to me about the app itself. Is it designed for the person with disabilities trying to access healthcare? Is it designed for the healthcare professionals? What's your target there?
Our target is actually both. What we're trying to do is, the app is a bridge. That's what we call it. It's a communication bridge between a person with a disability and their healthcare provider. And what they're doing is they're creating their accommodation profile. It's not a medical file or a clinical file. And it's very quick. It's very fast. It's, hi, my name is Ilanna. I've got spinal issues. I can't sit for long periods of time. This is what I need in my appointment. Hey, Dr. Clara, I'm going to be seeing you tomorrow. Here's 2 updates on my healthcare. Look forward to seeing you. and just telling them what I need very quickly. On the other end, it's for the provider because they don't have to start running around feeling stressed and feeling uncomfortable that they have no idea what's going on. They have no idea what to do. One doctor said it to me like this. She said, it's changing the entire nature of the relationship between healthcare providers and consumers with disabilities, patients, if you want to use that term sometimes, and the ability to give them inclusive, accessible, and respectful healthcare.
Are you finding that the healthcare industry is buying into this? Because it sounds like it's just giving healthcare providers a little bit more information ahead of time so they can prepare themselves.
Actually, we've had great feedback. We've done some beta testing among a lot of providers, a dentist, psychiatrists, therapeutic counselors, a few people who work in chiropractic and physiotherapy, and they've all said the same thing. This is a game changer for them. And we were really excited to hear that. Of course, we want the consumers to be happy. You know, the healthcare providers, they have to buy into it. They really do.
Talk to me about why you went the direction of an app versus maybe creating a website that's trying to, promote inclusion, et cetera, et cetera.
That's a really good question because that certainly was one of the ideas I considered. I also considered maybe like just an e-learning program, producing a CD-ROM because I'm an instructional designer and saying, okay, here's my program, now go with it. And I found that people just didn't connect with it. And on the website, the feedback was, you know what, there's a gazillion websites out there. How is this actually helping me? They didn't feel it was active enough. And on the provider's end, it was, no, you've got to empower the users to say to us, this is what I need so that we understand and can provide. And that's the way you create hospitable healthcare.
Hospitable healthcare, Stephen. I think that's a phrase we don't often hear, if ever.
No, I don't think I've ever heard that phrase in my life. I like it, though. Marc, Ilanna, let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we can learn more about the process of creating an app. I'm very curious about what that was like. This is Double Tap TV. We're back in a moment.
Can't get enough Double Tap TV? Subscribe to the podcast and get your fill of Double Tap every day. Visit doubletaponair.com and follow us now. Double Tap TV will be right back. You're watching Double Tap TV.
And we're back on Double Tap TV talking about healthcare and disability. Our guest this week is Ilanna Mandel, the founder of the ReadyBe app.
Ilanna, Stephen teed this up before the break, and we speak to a lot of developers on the show, idea people with a technical background, but you admittedly don't have a tech background. So what was that experience like actually designing an app or even thinking about it?
If I knew 5 years ago what I know today, I'm not sure I would do it. It's a very long process. And you know what? I've been very blessed. I have an extraordinary advisory board. I have 5 people with very different backgrounds, someone in trademark law, someone in mental health, someone from business, and also having also being deaf, another person from the HIV/AIDS advocacy community, service providers. They all got together with me and they have supported me 100%. And I have to give a shout out to our developers, Professor Henry Leung and Techies of Tomorrow out in British Columbia. They have done a fantastic job and we are really indebted to them for their amazing work. We're so glad to work with them. So you have to get the right people and you have to really be patient with yourself, because you're going to make mistakes along the way. That's just the way it is. And once you accept that, take it one step at a time, you just keep going forward. I'm thrilled to be where I am right now. Really, really thrilled.
Are there any takeaways that you could offer other people who are going down the road of creating an app for the first time with an idea that they have? Any takeaways that you could lend to someone to maybe save them a little bit of the headache?
Probably a book. But the first thing is ask yourself the question, what problem are you trying to solve? And ask yourself, what's the answer? and then do your due diligence, do your research, really find out what's out there, and understand it's going to be a journey, a long one, and it's going to be expensive. You have to accept that. It's very expensive to create an app. Usually you're looking at about $250,000.
I want to jump back because you talked about the accommodation profile, which is obviously what helps the person with a disability to explain their situation in a unique way to the healthcare provider. What are some of the other features of the app that you've implemented along the way that help that process?
The other one that we really feel is important was the trigger feature. And that we were thinking especially for people with mental health issues, persons who are neurodivergent, people with cognitive issues. That's the space where they can say, look, when I'm in the dentist office or I'm receiving acupuncture, this is what's going on for me. And this is how I'm going to experience that. And then they can say in a personalized note, I've given you this, this, and this, but here's another one or two things I want to mention to you. We're also creating, we're in the midst of creating a new feature on our website, which will be called the Queen Bee Guide. And she's going to, we're going to create a visual guide that's also audio, of course, also audio visual, to guide people who may be having issues with it because maybe they're new to using apps, they're uncomfortable with it, and hopefully that new AV guide will really help people out just a little bit further.
I'm sure there's some great takeaways from obviously people using the app, beta testing the app, et cetera, et cetera. Are there any stories that have come across your way that are ways in which people use the app that you didn't intend it to be, but was kind of like a happy repercussion?
People who cope with anxiety have given us some very nice feedback and said, you know, for someone like myself, especially going into a certain kind of appointment, I feel so anxious and I've never really been comfortable saying that. But if I can tell the provider ahead of time, hey, Dr. So-and-so, or, you know, the homeopath, the physio, whomever it is, this is how I experience being in your office, and explain it in their own terms. I heard that we were empowering them and that they felt a little bit more in control than they usually do. And they liked that. And of course, that made us feel very good.
It's amazing how sometimes just being able to get what's in your head across in a way that someone understands it is extremely beneficial. Even so, when you're in this situation, you don't have to worry about trying to explain it at the time. I've gone into appointments. My son is on the spectrum. I've got into appointments where I have to take a doctor aside for a moment and explain this is how he's going to react to certain things, so let's not talk about certain things. It's a bit uncomfortable to try and do that, especially in front of my son,
yes,
you know, because I don't want him to feel
yes,
different in cases like that. So this is extremely empowering that way.
Yes. It's one of the people on our board is a trademark attorney. And the reason she joined, she said, is because her son is one day going to be a user of the app. And she said, I see how this will help him when he's old enough to be on his own and do his own thing. And yes, I think what you're saying is exactly right. Going back to the woman who was in the office and is blind, and she said, you know, people wanted to grab her dog, people wanted to pet the dog and play with the dog, and trying to explain that this is a service dog. And yes, there's a time to play with the dog, but that wasn't it. And she said it felt so uncomfortable. Also being asked a lot of intrusive questions can feel very, very disrespectful.
Where do you see the app in 2-3 years from now? What's your goal?
My goal is for everybody in the world to be using it who needs it. And hopefully, one of our big goals is to get it into hospitals and clinics, so that it's integrated into their systems, so that if somebody is going into St. Mike's and they have, let's say they are neurodivergent, and they have the ReadyBe app, which our goal is that all users will have it for free. But the healthcare system will then pay because they're the ones who have the funds to pay. So they will then, have a ReadyBe app that pops up immediately. And they'll see, this person uses ReadyBe, the system will then generate everything that they need to do. And the person comes in and it's a hospitable, accessible visit for them. And easier on the healthcare system too. Saves them time, makes it easier on them. And I think everybody all around can experience a much more inclusive appointment or treatment.
Definitely a win-win for absolutely everybody involved.
That's true. Thank you.
If people want to get a hold of the app, where should they go? What's the website for the app?
It's very easy. It's ReadyBe.net on lowercase. And feel free to drop me a line at info@ReadyBe.net. I'd love to hear your, people's thoughts, and if people have ideas for how we can make it better, absolutely. We always want to make it better.
Ilanna, thank you so much for taking the time to introduce us to ReadyBe.
Thank you, Marc, for your time. I really appreciate it.
And you heard her. Drop her a line if you want to get in touch. And of course, you can check out the website. Ilanna Mandel, thank you so much for joining us. The website again is ReadyBe, and that is Ready, R-E-A-D-Y, and BBE.net.
There you have it. Someone with an idea looking to make healthcare easier for everyone who needs it. Sounds brilliant. That's a wrap on this week's show. Thank you so much for joining us. On behalf of Marc Aflalo, I'm Stephen Scott, and we'll catch you next week.
Thanks for watching Double Tap. Send us your feedback to feedback@doubletaponair.com. Leave us a voicemail at 1-877-803-4567. Hosted by Marc Aflalo in Montreal and Stephen Scott in Glasgow. Producer Marc Aflalo. Editing and graphics Jordan Steves. Voiceover Anna Vicino. Social media Wendy Kaufman. Integrated Described Video Specialist M. Williams. Supervising Producer Michelle Dudas. Manager Programming AMI TV Lizanne Gagne. Director Content Development and Production Kara Nye. VP Content Development and Operations John Melville. President and CEO David Arrington. Copyright 2023 Accessible Media Inc.
An AMI original production.